Hey everybody, Ed Homewood, Old Guy Hi-Fi channel. I hope everyone's doing well today. Today we're going to take a look at the Sonor Legato Unums. You may remember I reviewed their bigger brother just a little while ago. So sit back, relax, and we're going to talk about these speakers. Well, before we get started, today's product was provided by Home Audio. Mike Holm has a wonderful store located in Woodridge, Illinois, in the western suburbs of Chicago. If you're anywhere near the area, you got to check them out. The store is really cool. They have so many cool brands. There's so much stuff to see in there. It's amazing. And his staff is really knowledgeable and super helpful. Just a bunch of nice people. It is a really cool place to go. So there will be a link to Mike's website in the pinned comment and in the video description. And again, thanks to Mike and the team at Home Audio for loaning me the product you're going to see in today's review. So what is the Sonor Legato Unum? Well, it is a $5,000 pair of stand mount speakers. It is a two-way ported design, as you can see. It also uses Sonor's very beautiful molded, one-piece molded cabinet technology that they have pioneered. And obviously you saw that in when I did the Sonor Allegro Unum Mk IIs. Very similar cabinet design, very similar concept behind the design. So it does use a 1-inch ring dome radiator tweeter. It does use a 5.5-inch custom designed pulp paper driver. Has a frequency response of 43 hertz to 23,000. It is a nominal 8 ohm impedance, and it drops to a minimum of 5 ohms. I couldn't find the sensitivity, but they're pretty good. I think they're probably somewhere in the kind of mid to upper 80 range. Anyway, so now let's talk about the technology used in this speaker. So very much like the Sonor Allegro Unum Mk II, the Legato uses a ring radiator tweeter. It produces sound by vibrating 2 ring-shaped diaphragms. Now, the small size of the ring rolls helps move potential resonances up out of our audible range, up out of the audible frequency range. And the phase plug that's mounted in the center, and I'll try to put a close-up picture of it in. The objective of the phase plug is to increase high-frequency extension, and the design overall contributes to a smoother, more linear sound reproduction at virtually any volume level you want to listen to. So the Legato's midwoofer is a bespoke unit. It's made from a pulp paper composite. The design of the material is intended for large pistonic cone movement, very rapid pistonic cone movement, without deforming or flexing or changing its shape, which obviously would create distortions. The cone has a very high density, which enables good vibration acceleration, the stop and go. It moves really quickly. It's got a good, strong motor. The result is really a fast, detailed, very fast transients, a very detailed sound, very kind of effortless bass within its given range. The Legato uses Sonor Audio's proprietary panoramic crossover technology. It's crossed over to at 2,500 hertz. The crossover is designed specifically to control each speaker's driver frequency. Obviously, make sure that it stays in impedance. One of the goals that Gunny, the owner of Sonor and the chief head, head cook, bottle washer, and father confessor at Sonor, told me is to create a very smooth impedance curve so it works really well with tubes, and I'll talk about that. It is a very easy speaker to drive. It's not difficult. And again, sensitivity can be a measurement of a speaker's difficulty to drive, but honestly, it's more impedance and it's the fluctuations in impedance. So this is designed to have a very even impedance curve throughout the frequency range, because as impedance changes, depending on the amplifier, it can change the output, it can change the frequency response of the amplifier, because the output impedance of the amplifier, it wants to see a kind of a nice level flat impedance. But when there's huge dips or peaks in the impedance curve, that can change the output of the amplifier and cause distortion. So we don't want to you don't want to have that as an issue. So the crossover's electrical and acoustic phases determine. They use a lot of computer modeling design in these, and I think that's really good. And it is all full high quality components. Now the enclosure on the Sonors I think is really unique. I'll try and hold it up for you. They are quite heavy. As you can see, it's got a really interesting shape to it. I got my hand in the port there. But it's got a beautiful shape to it, and it is a one-piece molded cabinet, and it does have a beautiful finish, real wood finish on it. There are a number of finishes I think available. I know it's available in this walnut or whatever this is, and then some other finishes. You'll have to check the website. There'll be a link in the pin comment in the video description. So the single curved shell, it is extremely rigid, and that's part of it. I mean, it is very rigid. The non-parallel shapes obviously break up resonances internally, and it is interesting in that it's made of a variety of materials layered together, each with its own characteristic, its own resonant characteristic. So the idea is to make it as stiff as possible and non-resonant, and it's very, very, this box makes no noise whatsoever. And again, the cabinet is designed, as you can see, with the tilt on the front, to do some mechanical time alignment so that the high frequency information and the woofer frequency information gets to your ear at the same time. So anyway, that's the Legato, the technical overview of the Legato. Why don't I talk about how I tested it and some of the music I used, and then I'll summarize. Well, to test the Legatos, I used them with a couple of different amplifiers. The first one I used was the Advanced Paris A12, and they did a really, really good job. That's a beautiful amp, and it was a good combination. But I wound up settling on the Black Ice Audio F22. That tube amplifier, I think these are really kind of a very tube-friendly speaker. Once I put that amplifier on these speakers, it just opened up and the soundstage became really holographic, and I'll talk about that when I do my summary. So I used them, I fed the Black Ice Audio signal from my Artivana server running into the live micro DDC into the live Harmony DAC. I had them sitting on my 27-inch stands with the Isoacoustics Gaia feet on the bottom of them. And I had them about 10 feet apart, 11 feet apart. I moved them around a little bit, just slightly toed in, maybe, at my shoulders. And I was probably 9 feet away in my big chair. And so I wound that kind of non-equilateral triangle wound up being kind of the best place to get at the image. And I did. I moved them in and out and up and down and close. And then I changed the toe in. But again, had them aimed over each shoulder. And again, about 10 or so feet apart, and I was about 9 feet away. And that's where I found their best image. So why don't we talk about some of the music I used, and then I'll summarize, and we'll get on with this review. Well, the first album I want to talk about, and I used a lot of different music, as you guys know, but the first album I want to talk about, and I think I've used this in the past, it is Chick Corea's Now He Sings, Now He Sobs album. This is from actually it was recorded in 1966, but wasn't released until 1968. And it features bassist Miroslav Vitoujas and drummer Roy Haynes. And the album blends kind of post-bop, avant-garde, kind of free jazz elements. It really kind of showcases Chick Corea's adventurous spirit and real technical brilliance. His chops on the piano are just amazing. The compositions are energetic and exploratory and often moving seamlessly between structured themes and open improvisation. So it's kind of, people will take that melodic theme and then they'll work it and they'll play with it in a very improvisational way, and then they'll return to it. So tracks like Matrix, which is, and the title track highlight Chick Corea's rhythmic kind of complexity and harmonic inventiveness. And all of the members in the band, the trio, all really are working. They're in the same room, and I tend to gravitate toward recordings like that. So you can hear, one instrument over here, but you get a little bit of the bleed over on this side. And I like that because I get this feeling that they're looking at each other and they're feeding off each other's energy. And it's just really, really excellent. This album is widely considered one of the most important piano trio recordings in modern jazz history. Really, really good. So let's talk about the next recording I used. Well, the next recording I used was this recording from Colin Stetson called Sorrow. And what it is a reimagining of Heinrich Gorky's Third Symphony. Now, the Third Symphony is known as the Symphony of Sorrowful Songs. And this is a 2016 release. And it's really interesting in that Stetson was able to maintain kind of the core emotional weight and melodic structure of the symphony while infusing it with his own kind of unique sonic palette, layered saxophones, haunting vocals, elements of post-rock. There's certainly elements of minimalism. There's certainly elements of ambient electronica or ambient textures. The recording uses, there's electric guitar, there's synths, there's a heavy use of kind of, recording, I would say electronic techniques of processing, some interesting things going on to create different soundscapes that the music plays kind of within. It is a very visceral take on what is regarded as a very spiritual classic piece of music. It is kind of both, it respects the original piece, but then it really takes it and mixes it up and plays with it, and kind of radical in that regard. It really bridges the gap between classical music and kind of experimental. It makes the symphony kind of feel both timeless and, you know, very strikingly contemporary. Now, Colin Stetson is a American-Canadian saxophonist. He's a multi-instrumentalist. He's known for his powerful, physically demanding playing style and genre-defined compositions. This is very much one of those. This is an amazing piece. If you kind of like the ambient stuff and you're not sure about classical, this is a great way to kind of get introduced into some of the classical music structures that, you know, the classical composers use, but also then some really cool, very contemporary, very interesting kind of ambient electronic layering and flavor and spice put into the piece. So anyway, that recording from Colin Stetson, Sorrow, highly recommended. So now let's talk about what I thought of these things. So the Sonor Legatos, very, very interesting speaker, very much like their bigger brother, the Allegro Unum Mk IIs. They image beautifully. They really throw down a really good image. And on the tube amplifier, the Black Ice F22, the image was, you know, everybody, all of us as reviewers and audiophiles talk about the holographic tube soundstage. Well, I'll tell you what, it was there in spades with these speakers. The soundstage was just beautiful. It was wide, tall, lush, very well layered, good center focus, very good detail in the back. Although most of what I listened to was obviously the jazz trio in the Chick Corea recording or an electronic piece in the Colin Stetson recording. So the imaging in the Chick Corea, the imaging is everybody's kind of in the same room. They're all mic'd, so you do get some image, but it is really dependent on the engineers, you know, the volume level they put on each of the mics and the instruments and everything else. So it's kind of man-made imaging, and the Colin Stetson piece absolutely is man-made imaging, but I listen to a lot of other stuff, and I listen to some great classical music through these because I love classical, and I listen to some operatic music, and these things lay down an absolutely magnificent soundstage without any question. That, I think, is the star of the show with these, is the soundstage. I also think the star of the show on these is the kind of the lower mid-range through the treble. They're not a full range speaker. They don't dig that deep. The Legatos the Allegros did play lower, but it had a bigger woofer. These will play, honestly, down well enough that you almost don't feel like you need a subwoofer. But if you really want to go low and you really want to dig deep, you'd probably want a subwoofer. All my review listening was done without a subwoofer, but casual listening, I did put the subwoofer on. And that did help open up the soundstage somewhat more than just the speakers by themselves. But by themselves, really good. Mid-range, the bass doesn't dig deep, but it's very well defined and it's very well presented. I think there's a good sense of pace and rhythm in it, and I think there's a good sense of tone and texture. Mid-bass is excellent. Drum kits and attack on those sounded very good. The mid-range, the vocals, because I did listen to some vocals, some male vocals and some female vocals. On Luciano Pavarotti, you could get that big chesty voice. It was a big barrel-chested guy, and you could get that sense there. And then listening to some female vocals like Beth Hirsch or Annette Askvik, their vocals were really beautifully rendered, very detailed, very nuanced, very, very much a good sense of the performer's presence during the recording. I don't know how else to describe that. Piano, everything sounded wonderful. I did listen to Hannah Rania's recording, Bella Flaga, White Flag. That is a piano and cello duo. That sounded really good. The piano, pianos, when you get up high on the right hand, can get ringy. Even if you're standing by the piano, it can get a little ringy. It did, but this sounded completely natural. Whatever that ringiness was there sounded like it would sound if I was standing next to the piano. So they did an excellent job with that. Transients were well reproduced. Again, with a smaller woofer, there wasn't a big impact on kind of the lower mid-range and mid-range transients, big kettle drums or, electric bass, things like that. They were there and it was good, but now when you got into like a full orchestral crescendo, those transients were really well reproduced. The decays were beautiful. There was a great sense of room. Again, the imaging was lush and wide and beautiful. It's very, very good. Very rewarding speaker to listen to. This isn't your heavy metal, rock and roll kind of speaker at all, but acoustic trios and things like that, jazz, beautiful on jazz. I listened to a lot of acoustic jazz, a lot of Herbie Mann, Bill Evans, stuff like that, and they did a beautiful job with it. So, the I guess the tail of the tape is they're not full range, but the bass is good. Mid-range is the star of the show. High frequencies are the star of the show. They never got harsh. They never got fatiguing. I think you're better off pairing it with a warm sounding amplifier. The F22 it has some of that tube warmth. It's not like, sitting around the fire warm, but it is got a warm hint to it. Same with the A12 from Advanced Paris. The tube front end on that gives it a nice warm tone, but it's still, you can hear it be, it's solid state compared to the F22 tube amplifier. So a good tube amplifier, it doesn't need to be super powerful, because the F22 with the EL34s I have, and I think it's only about 50 watts a channel, drove them just fine. Beautiful speaker. Again, placement and setup is going to be a bit of a trick, but you gotta mess with them just a little bit. And it didn't take me very long, because I have kind of a couple spots in the room where I know something will sound good, and it's either gonna be a little bit in, a little bit out, but I'm usually about the same distance from the speakers all the time. But toe in will affect soundstage and everything else. And again, I had them toed so that they were kind of hitting just outside of each of the shoulders. So an absolutely wonderful speaker. I can highly recommend the Sonor Legato Unum. Really, really nice. Beautiful. So that's my review of the Sonor Audio Legato Unum speakers. Really, really nice. Again, another big shout out to Mike Holm and the team at Holm Audio in Woodridge, Illinois. Great group of people, great company. There will be a link to their website in the pinned comment and in the video description. I have no affiliation with them other than Mike's kind enough to let me steal stuff to review. There will be a link to the Sonor Audio webpage in the video description. There will be links to the two albums I discussed in the video description. There are some affiliate links in the video description. You guys know the drill on that. I have no affiliation with Sonor or Holm Audio. There will be a link to the community post playlist there. There are some other playlists linked there. Please, if you have a good playlist, share it with me and I'll put it on the community post. There's some great music there. Please comment. Let me know, where are you at in your audio journey? What kind of sound do you like? What kind of speaker design do you like? Are you kind of more of a classical music or acoustic jazz person, or are you more of a rock and roll person? Share that information with me in the comments, please. I think that's everything. Please like, please subscribe, please comment. You can follow me on Instagram if you want to. My name's Ed Homewood. This is the Old Guy Hi-Fi channel, saying now it's your duty to yourself, your obligation to your mental health, to put on some really beautiful music and just sit back and relax. I hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you so much for your time.